welcome back to another hour with Crowder with me, your host Crowder. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. And if you're already a subscriber, go ahead and ding the subscription bell to get all of my latest podcast interviews. Today, we got a good special guest, Gregory Forster, a former teacher at, where did you teach at?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
I'll just say it like this. My last station was at Gateway Charter Academy in Oak Cliff. It's right there off of University Hills Drive and Redbird. And I was teaching second grade. And when I tell you that to keep you on your toes, that's just a major understatement. So that was my last station before I had to stop.
You and the lady that I just interviewed just a couple of minutes ago, well, a couple hours ago, you guys are brave. Messing with those little kids. Oh.
Well, you know what, though? I appreciate you saying so. But there's one thing that drives us to do what we do, even though at the end of the day, we may not have the same amount of hair that we went in with that morning.
Or the same color.
Or the same color. Well, I ain't got nothing, so color's got nothing to do with it except for a tan. But it's the fact that there's a lost generation of kids out there. And I say a lost generation because in my experience, a lot of the kids that come to school are either being raised by their grandparents that really are too old and too tired to keep up with a 4, 5, 6, 8-year-old child, number one. Or number two, they were thrown into a family situation that they didn't ask for. You know, it's like either mom is in jail or dad is in jail or dad is on the run and mom is dead or whatever it is. And so they are like trying to, exist in a situation they didn't ask for, and you can't just let them fall through the crack, but then they require something else that is kind of hard for most average teachers to provide.
What is that?
Well, it's like counseling that these kids need. For example, I had a student who watched his dad get gunned down when he was about 5 years old. He watched him get gunned down. How does a 5-year-old process that trauma like that? And that's hard for them to know because they're barely understanding emotions anyway. And so what happens? The emotions come out in hitting people, or it comes out in just throwing objects, or it comes in biting people, or it comes in grabbing people's stuff and snapping their pencils or hiding underneath the desk and stuff like that. Many would say that he's just misbehaving.
No, but he's just emotionally unintelligent.
I wouldn't say unintelligent, but ignorant might be more accurate. Yeah. Because you don't know what you don't know if you've not been taught what you don't know. And at 5 years old, you're supposed to, I say this like Little House on Prairie Mess, but still it's the truth. The innocence of a child at 5 years old should not be robbed so dramatically. It's like when you're 5 years old, everyone's supposed to think you're cute. Everyone's supposed to like, can I hold him or can I take him to the zoo? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
But instead, it's like, no, I ain't dealing with him. No, Miss Crowder, you need to come and see about your child. And it's like, it's stuff like that. And even the family that's trying to keep the family together so that like CPS does not have to get involved. And so they want to kind of stay under the radar, even though 10 or 11 of them are staying in the same place, packed in a minivan to where everybody knows where they sit in the minivan or lay in the minivan. And you see the system work every morning. You've got to be appreciative of how they want to keep the family together. I'll never forget, and I'm sorry I'm going long.
It's fine.
I'll never forget. I would, be the teacher in the morning to help open the doors and safely get the kids out of the cars and into the walkway so they can go eat their breakfast. Well, there was this one family where, they literally did have 10 or 11 kids in the car, and they all had to get out in a specific order so that one is not trampling over the other. And then the last part of it was going to the tailgate where there were two that were like in the recesses of the back.
Yeah.
So that I call him Big Bird, to where the last child is laying down, to where he can roll out. He literally rolls out after they get out, and then everybody is in the cafeteria eating their breakfast, and that is a system that they never failed to do. But you could tell that there was love there. You could tell that there was, care there, and that they're trying to keep it all together. And that's what drives us, because of situations that they didn't ask for. And so you do it for them. You try your best to do it for them without losing your hair, without losing your mind, without losing your patience, because as humans, you're going to lose patience sometimes, but you try to make sure that your compassion outruns your impatience, that your love outruns your loathing of certain behaviors or certain things.
Yeah, I just want to touch back on the topic of emotionally ignorant, of being able to process emotion that you've never dealt with before, such as that kid, seeing his father getting gunned down. Now, with that situation, after a teacher would learn that that's what happened, how do one go about trying to exert extra energy to that kid, because that that's what happened, versus the other kids? Because you got to know that kid needs more attention than others.
Well, I'll tell you, the first school that I taught at that really, really baptized me in fire, I'm talking about fire that was fervent, okay, was at William Brown Miller Elementary School.
That's where I went, William Brown Miller.
Yeah, I was there from 2015 to 2016. And there was a man there by the name of Mr. Gowdy, who, if a child was having a bad day, would be the one to take him or her into his office and was able to calm them down or whatever. And it's that support system that makes it happen, because, at least at that school, there was a tag team happening to where if a teacher was having this problem, that they could hit a button or they could knock on the wall or something, and then someone would come to take them off, to get them to cool out, might even stay there for the rest of the day, but they're getting their work done. And it's the support system that makes it work, because just one person can't do it on their own, and they need to come in with the mindset that you are going to encounter that. Now, transparent moment, that was not me. Honestly, that was not me. Yeah. Because, the way that I was raised, the way my father decided he wanted to raise us in the suburbs and keep us in the suburbs, being exposed to those kind of situations was not part of our upbringing. That didn't happen until later. Actually, when I went to my historical black college, Houston-Tillotson University, in Austin, and that's when my eyes were open to the whole thing. And that's what made me to believe that, hey, these kids need to understand, that they are not lost, that they are not just written off as problem children, that they need help. And when you believe in every child, despite their emotional ignorance, then usually things start to improve for them. But initially, like in the elementary grades, that's a hard thing to deal with. My first day, I had to break a fight up.
I would have been mad. Those things are scary with kids nowadays. Kids know how to fight viciously nowadays. You remember when it just used to be the 1-2 punch, and when the kid was out, it was like, yeah, I won, whatever. Now kids are stumping you out until you're literally like blood everywhere now.
Well, that's
those fights are scary now, man.
But and the other side is, and this may not be the same thing, but I have to mention it though. I saw a video a couple days ago where a child was reading a math problem, and I would say he was probably in the second grade. And he said, if Jaden has $1 bill, 1 quarter, and 2 pennies, how much money does he have? Oh, Jaden broke. And if a second grader could say that, that really is a problem. Forget about that he had $1.27. He noticed that he had $1.27 from another context.
Yeah.
Like he didn't have any money. And it used to be that, you know, when we were kids, if mommy and daddy were having problems with money, they didn't let you know that.
Exactly.
You know, that your Pop-Tarts were still there, your clothes were still there, your lunch money was still in your hand or was paid up at the school, to where you didn't have to worry about that. And that's another thing. And that is another thing, which is probably more of a pandemic than COVID-19, is the fact that a lot of kids have been thrust into an adult role. And just it's just like underdone cake. If you had an underdone cake and you did not put it back in to finish baking, that thing is dense, and once it cools, wow, heart of stone is cold, right?
Yeah.
Once an underdone cake cools, that's it for that. It is heavy, it is dense, it cannot be changed. And if a child is thrown into an adult situation, then you can't tell them anything. How are you going to tell me anything?
When I basically pay the light bill at my house.
Well, either that, because mama or daddy or auntie or whoever doesn't speak English, or the fact that you were out all night. I had to make sure that my sister, who was crying, could get back to sleep.
Yeah.
I had to be called at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure everybody gets up, gets their bath taken, puts their clothes on.
So basically, it's like, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
So basically, it's to a point of you, adult, cannot tell me, kid, anything because I feel like I'm basically an adult.
Exactly, because and that's the other funny thing about it. That statement, you need to be in a child's place, can no longer be played if I've been thrust into an adult role.
Exactly.
If I've been kicked into an adult role, there's no way I'm going to slide back to a child's role because I was supposed to build up to that. But no, I got thrown into that like I slipped on some ice. And then once I hit the ground and I feel that pain, then I'm going to be pissed. And you think I'm going to get back on that ice and just slide back to being a child? No, you're crazy. You're out of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, that's what a lot of teachers, even in college age, a lot of folk are dealing like that, to where you can't tell me anything. I might not know how to use good grammar, but just because you do doesn't mean that I'm going to have to adhere to what you say the rules are, because I had to figure out how to write on my own. I had to figure out how to make it on my own. And then here you come, and you're going to say something to me, you know, and then they voice their anger toward their parent onto you, to where they're like, where were you when I was in the 9th grade and I had to write a term paper on the Red Badge of Courage? Where were you when I had to struggle through reading Iago and Othello in the 10th grade? When forget about being in Shakespearean language, just basic context recognition.
Yeah.
Where were you? You know, so that's what we have to deal with, you know.
I think that it's a merged partnership between the parents and the teacher. I mean, parent-teacher conferences are great, but after you don't see that teacher, that kid and their parent for none of the year, it's kind of time to do some Dangerous Mind type deal. Remember that movie?
Well,
just kind of go and just like, hey, what's up, you know?
Yeah.
Just get to know the kid on their own, and eventually you'll step into their world.
And yeah, and I hear that, and that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But the only problem is that you said dangerous minds. Key word is dangerous, because you don't know what their world actually consists of. You don't know if there is somebody on the other side of that door with a shotgun. And if I ain't never seen you before, then I'm going to think you're something else, or you're someone else.
Well, I'm probably not to that extent, like going to their house like she did. Of course, we're talking about a movie.
Right.
But, I mean, like as in, you know, hey, see what activities they're into. If most of these kids are, you know, if they got a pretty good head on their shoulders, they're into like some type of sports program at their school. You know, maybe go there. Ask, the coach about, hey, so and so, he's been kind of slacking in my class, let's just keep up on him, or you go to one of his games, cheer for him specifically or whatever, and hey, good job, just give him like extra courage, and eventually that kid will start letting you off into their life just naturally.
Usually that used to be the case.
Yeah.
It's really the kids who aren't in organized sports that really has the problem, because a lot of kids that are into playing football, playing basketball, playing soccer and stuff, we're told, if your grades slip, guess what? It's not going to happen. You can you can encourage them all you want to, but if Johnny is missing on a game, then you know what happened. Johnny's grades started to slip.
Yeah.
And so when you partner with the parent that way, to where, okay, man, now your mama told you that if you don't get this grade up, then you're not playing football. If football means that much to them, then yeah, they're going to kick it in gear.
Right.
But it's really those who have the talent for it that are not playing that's more the problem than those that are. And no amount of encouragement will actually break through what actually needs to be broken through. I had a third grader. His name was Jaquarian. His dad was thrown in jail. And the unfortunate truth about him was that he saw his mother and father argue and fight violently with each other. And he's angry at her because he believes that she is the reason why her father is in jail. Not the fact that he almost beat her down to where she drew her last breath, but that she caused him to go to jail. Yeah. And they had to run from Waco to Dallas. And if something didn't go his way, or if we ran into that part of his, what needs to be worked on, like his reading comprehension and stuff, he would get angry. He would start beating his hand on the desk. He would try to throw the desk and stuff like that, to where people had to clear that space, or I had to send them into what I call the cool-out zone. And I would encourage him and tell him, hey, you know what? We can work on this. It's like we could do one-on-one and we can work on this. No one has to see us. And we can get this up. It's not like you don't know. It's just that there are some things that we can work on together.
Right.
But that didn't do anything for him. That did nothing for him. And he continued to stay angry and do that. And then it got worse when this little girl started liking him. He started liking her. You're talking about how it used to be the girls would run around and slap the boys that they like and then run off.
Yeah.
Well, he called her Pom Pom because her grandmother put little Afro puffs in her hair, and he called her Pom Pom. And he would antagonize her to the point to where I had to literally catch her midair jumping at him for her being called Pom Pom. But he liked it. He liked the fact that she was...
And that strictly probably coincided with the fact that he probably thought that was how love was supposed to be because of his mom and his dad.
It's a possibility, but then also not knowing what is appropriate and not knowing where to cut it off when you see that the other person is being hurt by what you say.
It probably just goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
that emotional ignorance. Because
Mm-hmm.
at 5 or how old are you in the third grade? Like what?
You're
7?
8. You're 8.
Okay, 7, 8. So you don't know what liking anyone is about. You don't know how to process those feelings.
That's true, but at the same time, you shouldn't see second graders passing notes around in class asking if you want to have sex.
Yeah, you shouldn't see that either.
Yeah.
What is one of the things that you as a teacher, I know that you're not in that mode right now, but if you was, what is one of the things, because we know that COVID is rapid, you know that most of the kids have went back to school. What is something that you think should have been done before or while the reopening of the schools for COVID? And I know that this is a really beaten up conversation, but I don't feel like we get teachers' perspective of how it is to work with COVID, how it is to teach kids in this pandemic.
See, okay, and in a way, that's kind of a loaded question, but I understand where it's coming from because it is such it's a problem. It's like where.
Yeah, we don't know. Mask on, mask off. You got
Right,
the CDC
exactly.
saying, hey, don't wear a mask. And then they say, yeah, wear a mask. And then you got a whole bunch of kids. And then, separate the kids. And we don't know where to go with this. And then the teachers are kind of like, oh, I don't know. So
Yeah, well, it's like this, though. And, what comes to my mind might be really old school. But it's like, if a kid has to wear a mask, then try to make it fun, It's like, let them draw on the thing. Let them draw their favorite character or let them, bring like the Hulk or the Avengers as a mask thing or even make it a prize, because that's what's saving lives or the mask wearing. Now, as far as steps go for separating them with plexiglass and requiring them to wear a mask. Well, here's how I look at it.
I think it's just over exaggerated.
Well, it's really not, and I'll tell you why. Because just regularly, kids, they pick their nose, they scratch their behind, they, put their fingers under the desk and all that kind of stuff. So they're already germy to begin with. Yeah, they are. They are. You know what I'm saying? Sticking their finger in their mouth and stuff and all that kind of stuff, putting a pencil that they had in the desk, rolling around in the dust, put it in their mouth. So they're already germy. So the plexiglass issue, I say in school, there's whole class instruction to where everybody is learning the same thing at the same time. And then you break them off into partners to where like your brighter kid gets matched up with your not as bright kid to work the new lesson that's being learned. And then you've got your lower kids that you're doing one-on-one with in like a semicircle in front of you. So you've got these 3 or 4 here. You got your partners over here. The partners should definitely have their mask. I mean, they should have their mask on all day. It's like, they're next to each other. They're working the problem. You're working with them. Your mask is on. Their mask is on. And you're just working it all out. And then everybody congregates back to whole class, and you just go around and say, okay, Johnny, what did you and your partner come up with 4 times 3 minus 1? And you just go around the room. When they go to lunch, of course, you can't eat through a mask, but they have to take the mask off. But then the rule is that half of your math, I must need to go do math. Half of your lunch is in total silence. No child is to be talking at all for the first half. And then after, even if they get done earlier than others, they can't start talking to each other. It's not until 90% of the kids who are eating lunch have finished can talking actually begin. And in this case, once you finish your lunch, your mask gets put back on, and you sit there for as long as you got to sit there until Sally and them get finished.
See, my thing with it is I do think that it's very over exaggerated. Like, numbers have already shown that it's literally the flu, that it's the flu 2.0. And I don't want to say that like it's not important, because it is important. One person dying is too many, I feel. But we have to think of this as a group effort. And I feel like if you're gonna go through this whole process of keeping kids separated and mask this and plexiglass and know this and know that, no talking is crazy. No talking until 90% of the people are done eating. And it's just if you're going to go through this process of doing this, then just do virtual learning. Just do that, because this can't be good. This can't be any good.
That's true, but then there's some other factors to consider. Going back to what my teaching experience has been, for a lot of kids, that might be their only meal of the day.
Yeah.
And how much of it is going to be eaten if they're allowed to talk? You know, that might be the only thing that they will eat for the whole day. And if they're coming in foggy brained because they hadn't had any breakfast, then they need to be eating and getting the nutrition that they need so that their brains can be somewhat active. That's why they have to be at the school when breakfast is there and when lunch is there, because that might be the only meals that they have. Second thing is that when it comes to separating the kids from each other, with the plexiglass, right now that's the best thing to do until more research is done and more work is done for what the actual viable solution is. I don't know if you saw a little cartoon editorial that went around to when it was proposed that kids go back to school, what the kids were doing with the masks. Someone had a mask on like a pirate patch.
Yeah, I seen
talking
it.
about it's a pirate or it's a bra or look, I'm flying, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but to your first point, you said that they need to be eating instead of talking because that might be one. Okay, kids are gonna eat and talk. They're simultaneous. That kids do a lot of stuff at the same time. So that's not really a big deal to be eating and talking at the same time. Kids do it all the time. I do it all the time. We do it all the time. I see hungry kids do that all the time, eating and talking. I don't think that not eating. And then have you seen school lunches lately? They're not that big a portion. It's enough to get you full because they don't want you groggy throughout the day, actually.
It really depends. Because when I was at Uplift Mighty in Fort Worth, not only were there hefty portions, but they have more variety for the kids to have. For the kids that might be a little bit more vegan, they had those things. Those that like more meat and potatoes, they had those things. But see, the thing is that the kids in school have got to stay within a rigid guideline so that the whole, the way of going about school still follows into the cafeteria and as you go out.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with keeping a virus down. The fact that you can't eat and talk, you're still in the same place. And then back to your plexiglass theory or their plexiglass theory, because you're not putting up any, rules. You might agree with them, but it's not like you're in there saying, hey, we should do plexiglass. So I don't want to throw it on you like, oh, it's just you. But the plexiglass, like what, the virus isn't going to go around the plexiglass unless they're in a plexiglass box? I don't understand the thing about plexiglass. And actually the mask themselves on the box says that this does not prevent you from getting COVID. Actually, it's really the wrong mask altogether. It's just used for a protection from getting spit and blood in your mouth if you're doing like a dental exam or something like that.
Then you've got the wrong mask.
Everybody has the wrong mask. Everybody has the mask that comes in the boxes. Nobody's getting that N95 mask or anything. Everybody's just, and then if we just want to take it up a notch from there, they're accepting them in school with the wrong mask then. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, so if we're going to do it right. Provide the right mask so that they're actually safe, not the one that you do the dentist with. That's crazy.
And see, and that's what's trying to be discovered.
No,
if the
CDC been putting out wrong information, and they've been putting out wrong information for a very long time. They don't want to admit that they're just as oblivious as we is with this whole virus thing, and they don't want to admit that this is literally not as big as they say that it is. That's what they don't want to admit. And I think that, how like you lie sometimes, and you just got to keep up with the lie to just keep your dignity. I mean, you're talking about a whole bunch of prestige scientists that got it wrong and don't want to admit it. And I think that that's a little bit what's going on, that pride of, dang, I got it wrong. And two, it might be some agenda going on politician-wise, financial-wise. A lot of that is going on, too.
That's true.
I think that a lot of that is what's going on. They don't want to admit that they're wrong. It's financial gain behind it, and it's political gain behind it.
But then at the same time, there are also those who have integrity. Yeah, and really, honestly, to be oblivious to what the extent of COVID is, in a sense, is a good thing, because that means that someone has to stay on the case to try to figure this thing out.
Yeah, but if it's the wrong people on the case, especially the ones that has financial gain in behind it or a political gain in behind it, then we don't want those people that stand on the case because they're always going to veer in their best interest, whether it's political or financial.
Well, check this out, and let me find out what you think about this. American Telephone and Telegraph, also known as AT&T. They used to be the...
I didn't know that.
Yes.
American
Telephone and Telegraph from the 1880s was the authority on telephony.
What's telephony?
Using the telephone, telegraph, the all that kind of stuff like that. Morse code. They were it. And they made it to where you couldn't do anybody else except them. Ma Bell used to be the one that dominated all the phone lines all over the world. And then a company known as Microwave Corporation and a Company Incorporated, otherwise known as MCI, tried to come up with a less expensive way for people to get on the telephone. Well, AT&T said, excuse me, no, that's ours. You can't do that. No, I'm sorry. And then Sprint, which actually is an acronym, which dealt with the railroad, the Southern Railroad, no, it's the Southern Pacific Railroad, I forget the rest of it, but it's an acronym. And so they came on the scene. And so AT&T said, but wait a minute, excuse me, no. We got these people over here on party lines. That's ours. You got Southwestern Bell Telephone here, Pacific Bell here, Bell Atlantic over here, California Bell over here, Chicago Bell over here. All these bells are under my bell. You can't have it. Sorry. It's ours. But then in 1984, MCI and them said, we got to change this because they think that they are the only authority on telephone lines and are the only authority on long distance, charging people up the wazoo. It's kind of like living in a place where electricity is still regulated and you don't have a choice but that one electrical company. And so the Supreme Court said, sorry, Ma Bell, but you're going to have to give it up. You no longer can dominate the phone lines for people of America and the world. You're going to break up, and you're going to let MCI have their deal, have Sprint have their deal, and we're going to let anybody who can provide service to anybody come in, and you'll just be a competitor as opposed to the one who dominates. And we're talking about a course of we're talking about a course shy of 100 years. It almost took 100 years for that to take place because somebody said this should not stand.
Okay,
I compare that to what's happening with COVID-19 because with the people who want to actually solve this, because it's like this. Yeah, masks were put out long before COVID-19. Like what did you say? The cat's the occasional cough, the sneeze, maybe help with people with the flu or other kind of colds or whatever like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're like, we're going to coast along with that, and that should be sufficient. That should be sufficient. But then COVID-19 said, oh, really? Oh, you think that's sufficient, huh? Oh, okay. All right. Here we go. And then, like I said, the wrong kind of masks are still allowing the droplets to come in there.
It's the wrong mask all the way around. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't help anyone. So if you're gonna have kids in school, do it right. Get them the right mask. Get them the right things. Not a dang plexiglass that you're not even boxing them into, or a cover or a sheet or whatever that they're putting between kids. That doesn't matter. If you're going to have kids in school, do it right. Get them the right supplies, get them the right masks. If you're not, let them have virtual learning, because at least then they're safe there and they're semi-quarantining. They're only coming in contact with the people in their house. And yeah, their parent might go out, but their parent is going out to the same place every day and coming back the same day. And if they haven't gotten sick, 9 times out of 10, they're asymptomatic and everybody in the house have already had it. Or they're asymptomatic and there's a very slight little chance that they will not pass it along. And
well, that's true. That's true for anything.
No. So I just feel like it's either one or two things is happening. Either they're not admitting that this is not as big as they're saying that it is, or they just won't get the proper things because they're cheap and want something to happen for financial or political gain. It's either one or the other. There's no in between.
But see, the CDC doesn't gain either way. Because
CDC
they have a race.
Bill Gates has stock in the CDC. He funds them.
Because
and that's political and financial gain for him.
But then, how do you do the research if you don't have the finances to research?
I get that, but the person that funds them has financial and political gain. First of all, they're banking on not a scientist. He's not even a scientist. He's an engineer. He designs computers. And they're leaning on him now he's a philanthropist because he funds the people that tell us the news on all of these diseases. Well, whenever you fund something, and me and, my other, the Maddie Harlison, we was just talking about this. When you are funded by something, you dictate what happens in that organization, especially if you're donating a very large amount, and he does. He donates a very large amount of money to the CDC and other corporations surrounding by that affects whether this disease go away or stays here. So it's just like, hey, you got someone that's funding something that could gain something politically, and he's not in politics, but he runs with a lot of those people, and that actually is for vaccination and actually would benefit if this virus stays around. Then financially, okay, if he's funding the vaccine virus too, he's funding for funding for the vaccine to be put out. Okay, we all not getting this vaccine for free, so if we're all out here paying for this vaccine, he's gaining money. So not only does he gain in one way, he gains expeditiously, very much so, off of financial gain.
But then here's a question I have. Well, actually, before I even ask the question, there's a difference between a philanthropist and an investor.
He's not. That's the title that TV gave him. I don't think he's a philanthropist.
But what I'm saying is this. There's a difference between a philanthropist and an investor. A philanthropist is just going to see something that they want to put their money in, and they just give it.
Yeah,
and they let it go. Hold on. And they let it go. An investor say, yeah, I'm going to put my money in this.
In hopes of gaining something back.
But this is what I want to see within a certain amount of time. Return on investment. And in order for there to be a return on investment, there has to be a discovery, a profit made or something. And if I'm an investor, I'm not going to wait very long. But then as far as what you were saying before, there are a lot of parents that have to go to work overnight. There are a lot of parents that have to go from one job to the next, which means that their child will be left in the house all alone. And if children are left in the house all alone, what's the chances that they're actually really going to go to school? Because a lot of them don't even have the fear of God in them anymore, to where they're going to do their own thing. They can roam the streets. They can, have people come over, and all kind of stuff can go down.
You said that there's parents that's going to work overnight. School isn't overnight. School's in the morning.
Exactly. So they would never see their parent, and their parent would not ensure that their child is going to school.
Yes, they will, because when they get home, now school is started.
Yeah. See, you're okay. You're too old. See, when you were going to school.
No, I just work overnight, so
Yeah, but
I
see,
know
but
when I
again,
get home,
but
it's
again,
morning.
think about when you were born.
Okay.
You were born in the 80s. That kind of stuff was expected. Not only was it expected.
Well, we was going to school in the 80s. We're talking about virtual
I know that, but
learning
what
right
I'm saying
now.
is, but as far as how you conducted yourself, a lot of that stuff was already in your mind. And there are a lot of things that you knew if you did not do, there will be repercussions and consequences. Now you've got kids nowadays that don't have any consequences, or they endure them. And then if they're inconsistent. You're telling me I need to go to school as soon as you get home. As soon as you come home from work, you need to see me on the computer going to school. And I'll say, yes, ma'am. And all I got to do is wait for you to go to sleep. And I can act like I'm going to school, but I'm actually doing something else, playing Roblox or watching YouTube or something like that. And so you've got that dynamic also, which is why they're saying that in some cases it's more beneficial for the parent if the kid comes to school. Now, back when you were saying, yeah, plexiglass in and of itself is really not going to do a whole lot to ensure the kid doesn't get COVID-19. Yeah, there are a lot of masks that are insufficient to combat COVID-19. But just like anything else that's supposed to be for the greater good of the people, something is going to be made so that everybody can benefit from what actually does work. I mean, it used to be that when you drove a car, there were no seatbelts. It used to be that even though the speed limit was 70 miles an hour back in the 50s and the 60s, there were no seatbelts in the car. And a lot of people were, dying because of, pretty much flying out of the car. So General Motors said, oh, okay, so let's just put a lap belt in the car. They put a lap belt in the car. But they came to forget that metal is a good conductor of heat. Let sunlight hit those metal buckles the right way, and some little fingers going to get burned. What happens? They don't put the seatbelt on. Talking about the wrong mask. That's the wrong kind of belt buckle to put on the car. They don't have it on.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it, but I don't think that it's a good analogy towards kids not going, because kids are going to do what kids want to do. You're saying that they're not going to go to school virtually because their parents are asleep, but kids been skipping. So I feel like, but a good majority of kids wasn't skipping. It was just a couple of choice views. So whether you're skipping physically or skipping virtually, then, hey, there's going to be skippers. But I think the vast majority of kids are going to school. I don't think, especially if their parents is right there in the house with them.
Well, and I agree. I agree with you that, yeah, the majority of kids are going to go to school because they want to go to school. There. Their parents are watching them go to school, and their parents are involved.
Yeah, and
that's a very important aspect. Is that their parent is involved.
And most parents are involved nowadays solely because they don't got no jobs either to go to. So might as well be there with them and see what they learning about. Most parents, and congratulations to everyone that's actually back in their jobs. And,
yes, definitely.
That they're getting into phase 2 or phase 3 of their job or whatever and going back to work. But it's still a lot of people out there that are not there, and most parents are working from home now. A lot of these companies done decided, oh shoot,
it's cheaper for them to work from home.
It's cheaper for them to work from home. So now you got your kid and your mom. I see a lot of parents online. They're like, yeah, this virtual learning and this work about to wear me. Why? Because they're at home. They're at home working. Their kids right next to them in school. So I just don't think that it's a good analogy to say, well, because they parent work overnight. Then
well, that's not an analogy. That's a reality. And that's a reality that I saw every day.
Yeah, but it's a very small percentage of kids that's like, okay, well, I ain't going to school. I ain't going to virtual school.
It depends. It depends on where you are.
Yeah, it depends. But even if you're in the most hoodest of hood or wherever kids skip school, whatever, it's still a very small percent, because I was one of the kids that skipped school a lot, to the point where I had to literally almost pay for my diploma because I had skipped so much. I had the grades. I didn't have the attendance. So I understand. But when I walked back in school, everybody was still there. It was a very small amount of people that was leaving school to go skip. Why? Because you don't have anywhere to go. Even if you skip virtually now, where you gonna go? It's COVID. Everything's shut down. Where are you going? Just like when you was in school, where are you going?
Oh, I could tell you. I could tell you where I could tell you where they're going. I can tell you where they're going.
Maybe they have somewhere to go, but it's not a. It's a very small amount of people that's skipping out. Just like us. Most of the people that were skipping out had cars or houses that they could go to where they could smoke and chill and have sex or whatever. And now virtually, where you going to go? Everything's shut down. And yeah, it might be a couple of places to go, but enough to just skip school. Like you're skipping
You would
school.
be surprised.
Yeah, skip school to go to the park or whatever.
Oh, you think you keep on talking about physical places. So you're talking about physical places. I'm talking about virtual places. And what I'm saying is
But they do that already right there in school on their phone. It's no need for them to go anywhere.
if they have their phone. If they have their phone.
Oh, trust me.
But the protocol
they got their phone.
But the protocol is, at least most DISD schools, is like your cell phone is checked in when you come in.
Oh, they're not doing that. They're not putting their phone to the side. Kids are not putting their phones to the side.
No,
to
I'm
be
talking
in virtual
about.
school.
No, I'm not. Well, no, not in the virtual school. They don't have to when they're on the computer.
Yeah, because they're literally at home.
Right, but my whole point is this. What I was talking about with the seatbelts is that seatbelts had evolved. It took a while. We're talking about 50 years for seatbelts to be where they are now. Because back in the day, and you remember this, schools didn't have any seatbelts for kids on the bus. And now they have to try to do something special on the bus for those that insist that kids go to school. Now, me personally as a teacher, I don't think the kids need to be in actual school. Not with all this going on. I don't think so. And for those who have the privilege to have those jobs that allow them to work from home, they don't realize how good they actually have it, because there are those who wish they had a job that they could work from home from, but they can't. They have to be out, and they have to punch a clock, and they have to do that. So they want to be invested in their kids' education, but they can't because of their job situation. And of course, that could open a whole nother can of worms about how they got to that point and all that kind of stuff. That really doesn't matter because nobody really knows anybody's path.
Yeah.
But my thing is, what happens to those folks to where they've got to go out and punch a clock? What kind of system is for them to ensure that their child is going to school? We were just talking about earlier about emotional ignorance. I don't know how to grow into my emotions unless I am guided. I don't know how to get into a good work ethic unless I am guided. And if I've had to figure it out, then I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to pay attention to, what I'm not supposed to pay attention to. I might not even go to bed on time. I might go to bed 2 hours before it's time to go to school, and then I'm falling asleep most of the time. So it's like, without any and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is guidance. Yeah, okay. You talk about the CDC and those that, have political gain and financial gain and all that kind of stuff. But then there is that minority, if you want to call them the minority, that actually ethically are bound to find out A, what's gonna, combat this COVID-19, B, what the accurate coverings are, both for children and for adults, because they're saying that children under the age of 9, I think that's what they said, under the age of 9 cannot contract it. And C, if you have to encase them in plexiglass, are you lining it with some sort of a thing to where things can be captured? And we're not talking about keeping them isolated from each other. Although, no, you can't high five and you can't, hobnob or anything with each other.
Yeah.
But then if you can see each other, is the main thing. If you can partner up, that is the main thing.
Yeah, but you just proved my point about the minority. Minority doesn't rule. Majority does. People base science and facts and everything off of majority of people. So the theory of kids being in school versus kids being at home, you just proved it, that if you go off of the majority of kids, it would be better for them to be at home, because the small percent of them is going to skip out virtually.
Right, but then you may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. In my opinion, COVID-19 has done away with a majority and put everybody on a level playing field. And those that were in the majority no longer are, because they are being countered by those who said sending kids to school is stupid. To say, all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter is stupid, because we're not talking about the life of man. We're talking about the life of the black man that has been marginalized as no more than swatting a fly or killing a mosquito. That black men or black people are that expendable. I was thinking about this on my way over here, as far as education goes, and how they say that systemic racism doesn't exist, but it does, because back in slavery days, if a slave was caught being able to read and being able to write, then they were flogged. They were whipped, because it was against the law for a black man or a black woman to know how to read and write. Now, why would they want to make that against the law? Because obviously they see the power in us, and so they designed it to where as long as they can't read and write, then we got them. But then slavery got abolished. And then Frederick Douglass is a perfect example of how he educated himself, because he played the role of the ignorant black man and had the white kids to lord over him and show their ability to read, not realizing they're feeding it to him so that he became an educated black man through their hubris.
No, I don't disagree with anything that you just said.
Right, but what I'm saying is that the other thing is that the playing field has been leveled. Those that really want to stay the majority are really grappling. They're really reaching out. They really are being nasty. And you've seen it, you've read it, you've heard it, about how nasty it's actually become.
Yeah.
The president of the United States could not condemn white supremacy.
He's already done that.
He's done what?
He condemned it 3 times.
When?
There's plenty of videos of it, him condemning it 3 times before the debates.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I've not heard it.
No.
Because to say the white supremacy is wrong?
He deemed Antifa.
But that's Antifa. That's Antifa.
He did Black Lives Matter, and he did the KKK.
Well, see, Black Lives Matter.
He did all 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, Black Lives Matter, the organization, I don't know where that came from, to be honest with you, because
they did kind of just pop up out of nowhere.
And who brought that to pass?
Who funds them?
I mean, who organized it? Who even made it an organization?
Yes, 3 ladies that happen to be homosexuals.
But what is their ethnicity?
Black.
Is it?
Yeah, they're black.
And there are no white people involved.
I know it's definitely white people involved.
Okay, see, there you go.
Yeah, definitely white people involved.
All we made was a statement.
Pretty much.
We made is a statement.
Yeah, a lot of people don't look behind the scenes about.
And see, everything else after that is extra.
Yeah.
All we were trying to bring is a consciousness that Black Lives Matter. And I don't recall hearing Donald Trump condemning the KKK in any form or fashion.
Yeah. But I got 2 more questions for you before we wrap up.
Okay.
But we've been talking about, especially because of this COVID thing, the structure of school.
Mm-hmm.
The structure of school changing for the new world. A lot of people keep saying the new norm, the new norm. whether we like it or not, this might be the new norm for a lot of people. The fact that we're having to do things virtually and digitally, and there's not a lot of face to face. So, one of my things was replacing certain subjects and getting rid. I think we started on this a little bit the last time we met, and it was specifically about science. And I hate to get on this because we only have 10 minutes, but we're gonna try to do it.
Well, let me try to capsulize this in what little bit of time we have left. I was just talking about systemic racism in education.
Yeah.
And from what I remember reading in school and just listening to people who grew up during the civil rights movement and and my own experience and stuff, is that it used to be that things were substandard for black kids going to schools in the cities and all that kind of stuff. People got together and said, no, everything should be equal. We don't have to mess with you. You don't have to mess with us. But don't give us your trash. We deserve an education just like you do. Yeah. And my opinion is that, okay, fine. Is that how you want to do it? There you go. There's calculus. There's microbiology. There's chemistry. There's physics. What are you going to do with that? To where some of those kids that have a mastery of the perfect glass of chocolate milk or the perfect pitcher of Rubbermaid Kool-Aid, don't forget the lemonade, grasped onto that stuff to where microbiology is just like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. The bigger the puzzle, the more excited they get, as opposed to the rest of us who are like, man, as long as I can spell microbiology, I'm fine. I ain't got to know those intricacies. But the whole point of even taking it was to increase your mind capacity to think in higher ways, not just the base ways, not just the easy ways. Because as you know, as you go through life and you got to make those complex decisions, then your mind is already geared to consider everything, all the details. Microbiology is about the small details. And if somebody proposes something to you, you're not just going to take it at face value. You're going to say, okay, so you want to make a turkey. Are you going to fry it? And if you're going to fry it, how are you going to prepare the oil? Is there a safe environment? Do you have it on concrete as opposed to dry grass? Who's going to be around it? Are there going to be kids? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, no average American is going to use microbiology. I was one of those blessed ones that could skip chemistry and didn't have to take it.
Same. And that's why I know that science is pretty much BS. Not all science. I think that science should be around, but I think that science, especially in high school, should be replaced with economics, because we don't understand economics. And we do a little bit of it, and then we have an economics class our senior year, the last semester. What was you thinking about your last semester, your senior year? Graduating. You wasn't thinking about how to budget your money or do this or do that. You wasn't thinking about any of that. So they're giving us a very influential part of our lives, economics. It teaches you how to budget. It tells you what taxes are. It tells you interest rate, which is very important because you do interest rate on your car, interest rate on your house, interest rate on a lot of things. Even if you go into college, there's an interest rate. And you don't understand that because you've done it the last semester of your last year in high school. So what if we replace science? And I'm not saying get rid of chemistry and physics and whatever else type of science there is. Yeah, biology, chemistry, and physics. I'm not telling you to get rid of those. I'm telling you to teach those earlier in the year so that we can dedicate in economics 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, so that it can be like clockwork, like math is. You don't never stop learning math, but then economics is part of math, and they give it to you one semester your last year. And I think that's robbery. I honestly do, because everybody's not going to college.
Well, you know
But
what,
you need
though?
to know you need to know how interest rate work before you get out of school. That's why that's why they peddle these credit cards to kids as soon as they turn 18, because they know that they don't understand what a credit card really is. They understand that they got money on it and they can go spend it. But they don't understand the debt in behind it. Why? Because they don't understand economics.
And you know what? I can see your point on that. I can see your point on that wholeheartedly. It would make sense for there to be more classes geared toward getting ready for the real world after graduation and stuff.
Yes.
And obviously, school has changed from when I was in school.
Yeah,
'Cause it
me and
used
this
to
lady
be,
were just talking about they had trades. They used to have trades because they understood that everybody's not can't afford college. It's not that you ain't going, you just can't afford it.
right.
And you're gonna need a trade in this world to make it. I have two trades. I went to college. I didn't really like. I went to community college. I really didn't like it. I didn't. After I figured out the real thing in behind it, which is, if you can't, yeah, you can get a degree if you want to, but if it's not a demand in your area where you live, you either gonna have to move, or you gonna have a degree and work at Amazon. So what good is a degree when your degree isn't even in demand? You see those kids go out and go take liberal arts and they come home and they're a manager at KFC. Why? Because liberal arts is not in demand wherever they're at.
But see, here's the thing, though, because I went to Brookhaven College, and to my shame, I barely graduated with a 2.1, only because I skipped class. But see, that's supposed to get all your basics out of the way in anticipation of transferring to a four-year college, to where all you're taking are the classes toward your major. I majored in broadcasting, radio, television, and film. I got my communications degree from Houston-Tillotson University in 1991, and I was in radio for 15 years. I took 16 hours fall of 89. I took 19 hours the spring of 90. I said I wanted to take 21 hours in the fall of 90. They're like, no, nobody takes 21 hours. Yeah, you take these 19 hours in the fall of 90 and you get an A, then we'll let you take those 21 hours.
Yeah.
I said, bet. 4.0, where are my 24 hours at? And so the spring of 91, I passed with a 4.0 and brought that 2.1 all the way up to a 3. And then I just went straight into radio because that was my focus. What you're talking about makes a lot of sense, is that the liberal arts degree from Brookhaven or Cedar Valley or Richfield and all that kind of stuff, it's not where you stop. It's where you get off the bus and stretch your legs, but then you get back on and you go on to that university. But like you're saying, a lot of people stop with that associate's degree, which now a lot of high schools allow you to get that associate's degree while you get your high school diploma. That should tell you something.
That it's not worth anything anymore.
You know, it wasn't worth anything
Then.
unless you were going to be a nurse or going to be a certified mechanic, or if you're going to something in the medical field, or even to be a teacher up to like second grade. You know, if those were not your vocational focuses, then yeah, it meant nothing. You just had your name that had a school name on it and an emblem that was imprinted on the piece of paper, and that's all you have. But I agree with you that along with having to teach microbiology, that there should be a year. As a matter of fact, I would even go as far as to say that the economics class that you speak of should actually begin in your junior year, because that's usually when they start emphasizing the SAT, and colleges and college campus, college people come on campus and all that kind of stuff, to where it talks about credit cards and it talks about the interest rate, it talks about your credit score, it talks about the difference between a 15-year mortgage, 30-year mortgage, or even if you want to have a mortgage, it's like you may just want to have an apartment with a patch of grass in the back.
True.
That you don't have to mow. So
Yeah, I think it's like condo or something like that. What is that?
Well, I know there was an apartment that me and my wife were looking at, and it had a patch of grass. I mean, all I could do was just throw the volleyball up virtually. We couldn't play volleyball on the thing. It was just a patch of grass.
Yeah.
But I agree that there do need to be changes to how a lot of things done. Unfortunately, besides the U.S. Department of Education, the Texas Education Agency sets that in mind. The only way to change that is to let your congressman know, your senator and your congressman in Texas that represents your district, to know that, hey, we need to make this change. Make this change. Put it on the floor. And I'm sure there have been a lot of bills, that have been put on the floor that were, naysayed, with what you're saying. I mean, a lot of things need to change as far as school as a whole, and I totally agree with that. I don't think that enough time is given for the whole of, kids going to school. It goes back to what we opened with, is that there's so many different factors that you have to bring into light to really be effective, and there's not enough time in the day for it. There are not even enough days in the week for it. It's like it's almost to the point to where it's like, okay, Junior can't go to church this Sunday because we got to work on this, because he stabbed a pencil in little Betty's nose. We're going to have to deal with this. It's pretty much like that. And not to make a lot of it, but then that's where we are now. And if we don't really look at what the real deal is, obviously, you and I can both agree, status quo is no longer acceptable. There is no such thing as a new normal, because normal is still being defined as we continue in 2020.
Right.
And trying to force old normal into what's going on is causing the current normal to get worse. People are losing. I lost my mother-in-law behind it.
Yeah.
So it's like we need to chill out, look at what's really valuable, really invest in what happens with the kids, get involved, get to know their teachers, suck it up, take that deep breath, because you're trying to go to work and you got little, Ray running around, and stuff. And hey, let's not bring about any premature illness, since we're already dealing with COVID as it is.
Right. Well, we're going to have to definitely do a part 2 of this. I still have like a crazy amount of more questions to go. But of course, this is called an hour with Crowder, not an hour with a day with Crowder.
Right.
So if you do want to, you can put your social media up, or tell people, the audience, your social media, if they have any of those questions that they do want to ask you from just your social media website.
Well, honestly, mine is more social than it is professional. It would be better if they go to my Instagram, which is G, like G, the letter G, EEJEE, 68. That's where I am at Instagram.
Okay.
Any and all questions, you can give that to me. But of course, if you need something written to be edited, go to my Facebook, because I am the grammar punctuation Nazi, and I will make anything that you write look like pure gold.
Right. Okay. And also, you can link in with me on my Instagram, which is Crowder _ with an A, not an E _ great. On all platforms such as Spotify, Anchor, Google Play, just any of those platforms that's audio only, An Hour with Crowder. And also my Facebook is An Hour with Crowder also. And we're out.